What's going on, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. Everybody has been talking about Oceangate on social media, where the CEO, Stockton Rush, among the other five passengers, was killed in his submarine. And I wanted to wait until James Cameron actually, he's an expert. He's actually been to the Titanic 33 times. And he, just basically gave his thoughts. And I wanted to read those to you because I felt like he's one of the leading experts in deep sea diving. He's been successful at it. Him being the director of the Titanic, he's the researcher. He said that he compared the tragic loss of the submersible Titan to the very thing that may have led the Titanic to its own demise, overconfidence that led to disaster. This is via ABC News. Cameron, who famously directed the Oscar winning blockbuster Titanic, told ABC News Thursday that he noticed the parallels between the 1912 sinking of the British passenger liner and the demise of the submersible designed specifically to visit what remains of the sunken ship. He says, I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself, where the captain was repeatedly warned about ice ahead of his ship, and yet he steamed up full speed into an ice field on a moonless night, Cameron said, and many people died as a result. And for us to have a very similar tragedy where warnings went unheeded to take place at the exact same site. But you could see him being deep in thought during this interview and him trying to process the exact incident of this historical tragedy repeating itself 111 years later. It's beyond sad. And what's even more sad is that the 19-year-old, because him and his father, it was Father's Day, but the 19-year-old, he said that he really, was terrified and didn't want to go. And they found out that, the Titan had imploded within an hour and a half of being submerged. So this was unsuccessful on so many levels because, the CEO, Stockton Rush, he believed that a sub made with carbon fiber would have a better strength to buoyancy ratio than titanium. That was wrong. He basically fired his safety protocol director which blew my mind, right? Because James Cameron, because he has gone down there 33 times and he's actually, dove further than where the Titanic wreckage was multiple times. So in my mind, that's the person to ask, right? Like you want someone who is experienced in, whatever you're trying to take part in, especially something as unknown as the ocean. You wouldn't go to space just on a whim, a whim and a prayer in a tin tube with a PlayStation controller. And I get it. They said that the PlayStation controller is used oftentimes by like the Navy and things like that. But Stockton Rush, I mean, he disconnected verbal communication because he wasn't trying to be interrupted. He said that he wanted to be like the captain of the ship. And one thing, you know, James Cameron, he always dove with a two sub system. So he said that he always had another sub underwater at tandem. And his submarines, he said, were tested for years. They were a minimum of $10 million. I mean, he took all the precautions. And one thing that struck me during this interview was he kept saying that deep sea diving is a mature art, okay? Meaning that you have to respect the ocean. I mean, you know, as human beings, we truly are frail. And this CEO said things like, well, if you don't want to be safe, he kind of thumbed up any kind of safety protocols, and he's like, you know, I'm not risk adverse. So if you want to be safe, don't get out of bed, never get in your car, yada, yada, yada. And no, that's not the same thing. Okay. First of all, to even have a car, you need training, you need a license, you need registration, you need, all these things, seat belts, right? There's all kind of safety precautions. A lot of states have e-check or e-verification that do checks and protocols to make sure that the car is safe enough to drive even before it leaves the factory. It goes through, crash tests and all kind of protocols. And that's just for a car on the road. You know what I mean? Like if something happens on the road, people can get to you, an ambulance can get to you, firefighters can get to you. You know what I mean? Other car passengers can get to you because cars and roads are filled with people who, unfortunately, if something would happen, they're able to step in and give you assistance, right? As opposed to being miles underneath the sea, where the only thing there is, maybe Ariel and Ursula. And I'm like, there's nobody there to help you, unfortunately. And I could not believe how at almost every single level, including the waivers that, discussed death 3 times on the first page, they paid $250,000, $250,000 to go into this tube, to go to the Titanic. And what struck me, another thing that struck me is the window was so small that you wouldn't even have been able to see the Titanic had they made it successfully, hypothetically, right? Because it's so dark, there's no lights, so they essentially would have been watching it on a screen anyway. If you want to see the Titanic on a screen, if y'all don't get a virtual reality or go get a documentary or watch James Cameron's film, you know what I mean? Like, all of it from beginning to end. I think that's what's fascinating the world, is because, if you're not in the billionaire world, then just as the average person, you do take on a lot of risks every single day. Like, you're not insulated by your money or wealth. And I think for a lot of thrill seekers, they are largely protected, just like the search teams that went out for these 5 gentlemen versus the migrants in the Greek waters with their boat. They capsized and all those people unfortunately drowned, and they were trying to, make their way safely from persecution. But because they didn't have a lot of wealth, then, just the whole situation to me was a socioeconomic lesson, a lesson on how our society functions, on, safety protocols. And another thing that struck me is that Oceangate, which is the company, they already had a job application or a job posting almost as soon as we found out that the 5 gentlemen didn't make it because of the implosion. The US Navy said that they heard them, but they didn't want to give away their top secret location. But yeah, they heard it implode days ago. But yeah, they already had a job application up. I was just, yeah, it was mind blowing. It was definitely educational. I'll say that. James Cameron's trying to process it here, and so was I, because I was just like, from the safety protocols being ignored to the money that went into the excursion. It didn't look like it cost a whole lot to make. But my heart does go out to the families and the people lost, because it is heartbreaking, especially the 19-year-old who didn't want to go, but just went along to get along to make his father happy for Father's Day. that was, in my opinion, the saddest. But you guys, let me know your thoughts about Oceangate. If you're new here, welcome. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you later. Take care, Aces. Bye.